Yeah, thanks for introduction. And to be honest, I very rarely do prepared artist talks where I do a structured presentation. And now I just realize it one more time that I'm right, at least for myself, in my decision to go like that, because after Yuri's talks and Ida's talks, I decided to change half of the talk and how I would do that if I would have a presentation already edited. So what makes me happy and flexible. I will talk about all the same what you just heard from an amazing talk by Yuri and Ida, but in a slightly more geeky way, but I will still use words like poetic and metaphorical, so don't judge me. And I will start from the work which I didn't plan to show, but I think it fits nicely, or at least I think that it fits nicely into what we were discussing recently, or what we were listening. And it's a project, to be honest, of course, inspired by my very, very good friend Ralph Baker in many ways, but everyone now is inspired by him, I think. And it's a project which is directly connected to mountains, rocks, and Slovenia, and I think it's pretty important, at least for myself, to say a couple of words about this one. So the project is called Resistor, and I have an obsession with collecting crystals and minerals. So I have a really huge collection, and I don't remember even all the stones I have. It's too many, and the names, you know, it's impossible. You can, luckily there will be soon good apps with AI that can recognize and tell you exactly the name of the mineral. But even from a different cave, the same mineral, the same chemical composition could have a different name just because locals name it somehow differently. So before I moved completely to Ljubljana around 2018 or 17, I was here for, I don't remember what exactly for, and there is a nice gemstones shop in the center close to McDonald's. And I found there an amazing piece of magnetite. Magnetite is a really nice looking mineral, which is a combination, one of the many oxides of iron. One of many times, maybe with something else. I'm not really good in chemistry, to be honest. And it's a cluster of crystals which are growing on the limestone. Yeah, I don't know if it's the correct name. So, which is a typical thing, and it's from one of the local caves. You know, there are some around, I just bought it because I like it how it looks. But then I came home and I was quite curious what's going to happen if I apply a multimeter on it, how it will react to some signals going through that. Remember the first work Yuri was presenting. Of course, different crystals, different minerals, especially if they are conductive, electrical conductive, they could do something. They could, some react if it's a piezo crystal, or they have piezo possibilities. By the way, a very nice thing about our bones, they are piezo crystals as well. So if we apply electricity of them, they can shrink, and opposite way, so we can make speakers out of, but that goes too far. Maybe one day, but yeah. When I was trying to pass different types of signals in different ways, how you can study matter, study exact mineral, I realized that I never got the same result, even in the same spot. Somehow this completely cold, non-living object acts. It has its own behavior. And at first I was thinking, okay, it's kind of a glitch of a device I was trying. But I had a very, a proper one, industrial, high-quality multimeter. And then I realized that because of many, many different reasons, probably, I also read that magnetite, which is very common, it's one of the main sources of iron on Earth. Industrially, it's harvested not from the caves like that, but from bigger sites. It's used for being transferred into the classical iron. Just one of the main sources of iron on our Earth, because iron is rarely exist in a clean iron. So it's chemically processed then to become iron. But I realized that it's actually, I read that it's a semiconductor. And because the way how the crystals are growing, there should be a close-up photo, one more somewhere here. It's pretty beautiful. I mean, I really like how it looks by itself. They have some resistance between each crystal. They also, depending on the temperature, depending on the actually the fact that the current flows through it, they, I don't know, move. Maybe this is like a micron of movement, but this changes something. And semiconductors, they make the electricity or the signal, which is also electricity, depending on the type of a signal. It makes it, the signal somehow being lost in a labyrinth. Since it's still going with the speed of light, because the electricity goes pretty fast, so we don't see the delay, but probably before one of the probes of the multimeter would receive the signal from another one, there is some delay, which we cannot even recognize. But probably the electricity goes like 1,000, maybe millions times around before it reaches the exact spot and get catched by the second probe of the multimeter. Usually you use two contacts, right, to detect the float. So I immediately decided to make a workout of that, and I think for me this is maybe the key thing I wanted to talk today is actually about the origins of the project, about the way how literally anything around us, especially if you are studying this and interested in that, could become an inspiration and then a motivation also to create something around that. And then it's actually the magic of being an artist, how exactly you're going to execute this into something that could become a piece. And so what happens in this machine, it looks like a small spider, robot, whatever, a creature. And a creature which is made of electronic parts, which were minerals at some point, but then through industrial processing, they become, I don't know, plastic or electronic components, or even a computer with many different electronic components. And it has a chunk of this raw material in the middle of it, which become like a heart of it, or maybe even a brain, whatever. And it's like, an advanced technological device that holds a small baby, which is just a very, very basic cloth of materials that then potentially could be turned into something like that. So between the million years, industry, processing, culture, whatever, but they are almost the same, because they have this, characteristics of still processing, or maybe it's too pretentious to call it processing, but somehow act, while you are applying signals to it. So this creature is touching himself, but touching this, pearl inside of the shell in different spots. And whenever it touches, it draws a graph how exactly signal passes. And if you are holding two probes, or the machine holds these two probes on the crystal, the signal never goes just like a solid line. It always creates some fluctuations, which looks super nice to me. And I forgot to mention, this project is also a collaboration with another artist, Alexandra Gavrilova, who was in response for helping me with the graphics. Actually, it's a joint project. I should not say what was her role, or it doesn't matter. So, and what's the most fun for me here, we will see in the video, I will briefly show the video, is that the graphs we get reminds me Alps, and where are the caves this crystal is coming from. And also they reminds me the topology of these crystals themselves. So it become kind of a recursion in many ways. Of course, it's very artificially and metaphorically overlapped by myself here, and this is my interpretation, but this is so cool through the characteristics of the crystals, gets the image of the region where they are from. So to me, this is the main, like a poetic result of the whole project. Of course, artificially combine it and pack it into this art piece. And at the end, it's also a sound piece, because whenever I see the graphs, I want to sanify them. This is a kind of a perversion I have. So, I will just briefly show you how it functions. Sorry, the quality is a bit low. I will try to make it higher. I don't know if there is a sound. There should be some soon.
It's a very simple schematics that explains you exactly what I was telling you, but more with the technical details, how this functions.
Well, it goes to the certain amounts of graphs that would appear on the screen. Some touches not give any drawing, while others, even if the props would be really far, would give a really like a beautiful curve, beautiful shaped graph on the screen. Until it reaches, I think, 20 graphs, it's erased and then starts from the beginning. Like right now, you can see the drawing while it was touching. Well, I hope you get the idea. For me, it was not so important to show you or to make, the sound appearing here, but explaining you how a visit to the gem shop could easily turn you into an artist if you are interested. So I will also probably speed up. I need to see the time, so not to be too long. Okay, so I have prepared another 3 projects which are connected to the trilogy I would like to talk now. And it's, I cannot make it smaller, the screen. Maybe like this, yeah. And all of this, I will scroll to the image where all 3 of the installations are standing together. And all of these 3 projects are united in the trilogy, not just because I wanted, but because of the strategy I was using here when I was taking some really huge geological phenomena, usually somehow connected to the okay, doesn't matter. So the formula of each project is making an installation inspired by some geological phenomena, taking the installation to the site it's dedicated to, filming the movie, and then showing not just the installation itself, which becomes just an interface for the whole project, but trying to present the whole study or the whole research, of course an artistic research I was trying to do about exact phenomena. So it's all started, I didn't plan to make it as a trilogy, but it's all started from the first project, which is called 12,262, and it's an installation dedicated to the deepest ever drilled borehole in the Earth crust. There is still nothing deeper than that. There are a few boreholes which are longer, but none of them are deeper. And it was a huge Soviet scientific project which started late 60s. Actually, the drilling process was happening for 20 years, from 1970 to 1990, and they reached more than 12 kilometers. there is a fun theory that actually Soviet Union collapsed because they reached hell, and I definitely believe in that. So, and it's not a single hole. Actually, it's a structure which looks like a root of a tree. So this is the deepest point. And each new branch of this route means they had a collapse of the drilling mechanism. So, and they were starting over. Already in 1980, they reached first time 12 kilometers, but then they had a catastrophe here. I mean, not a catastrophe, but the mechanism was broken, and they started from about 7 kilometers once again. So, and the hole was quite small, actually. When I made the installation, I took it lately then to the site, and it was designed to actually stand right over the hole. Let me, okay, it's too many photos, the documentation is too rich. So, first time I was there in 2016, together with Timothy Morton and his program, which was called Dark Ecology, and his conference around that. And in one of the laboratories of this, it's now completely abandoned, so it's collapsed. In one of the laboratories, I found a perforated tape, which was a processor of our USB sticks, diskettes, whatever, types of media. So they were used in early computers for storing and for loading information or program into the machine. So I found a roll which was laying in one of the labs in a rusty water, and let's say I preserve it. So I took it with me as a memorabilia. But immediately I realized that I should turn this into the project, because I was so impressed by the place, by the scale of the scientific project, and by the way how it's now looked completely destroyed, and how nature also takes everything back. So this looks like this. This photo was made actually in July, but there was a permafrost, so there was a snow constantly laying all the time. There was no trees, no wind, no airplanes flying over it. This is really, really up north on the Kola Peninsula, so this is on the border with Norway and Finland, but still on the Russian side. And yeah, it's quite an impressive place, and many scientists in the times when it was still functioning were really dreaming about getting job there, because it was like salary was 3 times bigger, and also you were far from your wife, sitting there for 1 year, and so on and so on. So no, it was of course not only men's there, and it was like a space station in the middle of the Arctic desert, actually. So the snow was laying completely, covering the whole area for 10 months per year. So, and during the day you have sun circling around your head, and during the winter it's constantly night. So it's quite an extreme place. But it was decided as a place to drill on purpose, because this is the area on the Earth where the earliest solid parts of crust, of the Earth crust, are still pretty close to the surface, because there is no soil. Here we have like 1 kilometer of soil or something, There the ice ages were constantly vanished somehow, and now since it's a permafrost, it's just not growing. So you immediately go into the oldest solid pieces of earth crust, and this is why scientists decided to do that. So for me, the starting point for the project was this perforated tape, which I immediately realized that it's, it's pretty easy to find, that it has just the standard ASCII codes for coding the symbols. So, and it's pretty easy to read, but there is no there is no perforated tape to USB connector, unfortunately. So I made myself, which I just repeat the technology which was existing when it was made, with just the optics. So there is like an array of LDRs or photodiodes, and just regular light sources. And while it's going line by line, you just scan the holes, or if the hole is there or not. And through the amount of lines, you could code more or less data into the single line. So in the old devices, they were running pretty fast, but still on like a big row, you could store maybe like, I don't know, 1 megabyte of information. Here, I was not so much interested in reading what exactly is on it, but then actually I realized that when I got the information, I realized that it was some data from the sensor which was stored on this perforated tape. So it was just a recording of some sensors which was installed maybe, I don't know, 8 kilometers down there or even more. So the installation itself is a big homage to this project. And when I started to work on it, I started to collect different artifacts somehow related to the project. So I was writing to the local groups in that region. If someone, parents were working there, and maybe they have, some materials still, and they are ready to sell. I invested quite some money in buying different artifacts, documents, and also from the people who were stealing from the station when it was completely collapsing. I even found a guy who owns a big red Soviet star, which was somewhere over here. He asked me for $5,000 for it. So unfortunately, that was a bit too much. And then I said, like, let's wait. I will wait until he will drop the price. Maybe one day I will still buy it. But I still bought quite a lot of interesting artifacts. And what's the most important, I managed to get a lot of stones, which were extracted out of the borehole, and it's less of the stones existing on our surface than the stones taken from the moon. So because the hole was so small, and they took just some samples from this deepness. But I managed to get quite a lot of them, and now the prices for them rise. It's really crazy because this story became a bit more popular. Not because of me, but the same year I made this project, Lars von Trier made his movie House That Jack Built, if I'm correctly pronouncing the name, and he was mentioning this borehole there as one of the ways how to get to the hell, even with the footages from Soviet times in it. So it has become quite popular in the last years. So what the project is actually doing, I took samples of these stones, and I broke them into smaller pieces. Some of them which were not solid, not in a perfect shape. And I made 5 drilling mechanisms. 5 because there was 5 main branches in this route, and each of these drills are actually drilling. I will find a better photo maybe, or even actually start the video and I can speak while it's running. All these 5 drilling mechanisms are actually drilling the exact, samples, and the way how they do that, or actually the program for them, is taken from the perforated tape. So the source, the data I got from it is actually controlling each of the 5 mechanisms and the way how deep it goes, the speed of the motor, and so on and so on. This is my own interpretation of the data I get from it, but it was quite simple because it's just like a lot of numbers and very rarely some symbols, and I decided what would mean what. And I was expecting that installation would sound pretty terrible, like a dentist cabinet, not really pleasant. But then, actually, when I turned it on for the first time, I was impressed accidentally that I got a pretty nice sound, which perfectly fits to my impression of the space. Actually, what you hear now on the background is the sound of the installation, and without actually much of processing of the sound that comes from the drilling mechanisms. So I had piezo crystals, actually piezo discs, these classical piezo microphones installed under each of the mechanisms, and then it could stand like years this is the installation that was the most used by me in different exhibitions. It has more than 2 years of constant play. Of course, with some breaks for different shows, but it was it was many times taken to different exhibitions. And what is the most important that, or I said this many times about most important, everything is important. So at some point, I decided to take the installation back to this site. At that time, it was already extremely hard to get there because all this land around is owned by the corporation that harvests nickel in this area. Even the closest city, not the city, a town, which is the dirtiest town in the world, is which is about 10 kilometers from this site, is called Nickel. And people get like 5 salaries per year just for staying there because this is so dirty, and they not just harvest but also process the nickel over there, and then it's really terrible place. So I took the installation with me, and I was walking about 10 kilometers with it on my shoulder because all roads were destroyed. And actually not only me, but the guy with the camera, he was hating me, but he was paid. So I will maybe just immediately jump to this part where we made this expedition to the site. So maybe just a few seconds of how it was operating. Here in this central part, it's one of the core samples which is cut to create this small pancake. And it's written SG free. SG means сверхглубокая, so extremely deep, free, because this was the third super deep borehole made in Soviet Union. Small monitor that shows actually the data from the tape. I think you get the idea how it was functioning. Then the main the main part of that movie. It was very hard to cut this movie because I was swearing all 10 kilometers because it was so heavy to take it. So I found just like a few seconds when I was silent, not saying anything bad about art and why I decided to be an artist, It's better to be a photographer or a painter. So this is 2 in the night. Perfect light. You get the idea. I better gonna briefly explain 2 other projects of Trilogy because I think I'm already, or should I already quit? Okay, I would just, it's important for me to stop it in the right moment, otherwise this will take too long. So I would just briefly show or say a few words about 2 other projects which are also part of this trilogy. And they happened because I was so inspired by the process, that the project could be extended to a travel, that I could make a movie about that. And then I forgot also to show, sorry, that after everything was done, after the project was completely executed, I was always showing it with the whole archive I get from about the installation, with all the core samples, with all the letters sent from the people who were working there to their, I don't know, friends, with everything I could get dedicated to it. So it became like a museum of one project, or not even a project, but the scientific experiment, where installation is just an excuse to dive into that. And I immediately realized that I should continue somehow in the same way. And then in one other shop I bought a piece of meteorite. And I was like holding it in my hands and was thinking what I can do with the meteorite. Probably many different things, but I should go into the completely like a crazy mode. In the same time, I really like to watch shops like AliExpress. You know, it's quite crazy. You could see really insane things there. And then once I saw that they were selling this device, which looks like a water heater, which is actually not. It's a huge coil for people who are working with jewelry to melt gold or to melt metals, because it's an inductive coil that could turn iron into the very high temperature. And if you make some, construction out of iron and you put softer materials in it, they would just melt in it. So it's like a home oven for cooking metals. And then I realized, okay, I have a meteorite. They're probably made out of iron. What if I will put it inside of this device? And the first result was quite fun. I made a fire because the meteorite get so red and hot it fell down on my floor in the studio, which was always full of shit. It started to burn. I was very happy. So I realized that I got the idea for the project. So what the whole installation is doing, you see it was burned many times. Since it's made out of acrylic, sometimes meteorite jumps out and goes completely through the installation like a hot knife through the butter, which makes craters which look super nice on acrylic. So what this installation is doing, I have small pieces of one exact meteorite, the biggest ever iron meteorite that has fallen on Earth and was somehow analyzed and it was studied well. And the meteorites get extremely hot there, and they hit to the Curie point, to the point when metals, the iron lose its magnetic possibilities, and it falls down into this cup, and thermal cameras are looking on it, and they're seeing the moment when it just came to the, let's say, ground, and they are cooling down, and they are turning this cooling down process, or like just time into the sound. So this installation recreates the moment which we never catch, the moment when the meteorite just fall on the earth and cools down very slowly, and until we reach the area it would take like maybe a few days or we will never find it. But here the installation creates this, repeatedly. So it's a reenactment of this fall. But then once they cool down, they become magnetic again. So the arm goes down, picks it with the magnet back, and so it's they are trapped there, and they are falling like every hour 2-3 times, and then cools down, creating a sound composition because all three of them are doing this constantly. So yeah, here is the small explanation how this was happening. It also has the video, which was also very hard to cut because this was even harder area to reach with the meteorite field, actually with the craters of this meteorite. So you can watch it later. I will just briefly explain the third one and then I stop. Okay, just talk. I can. This was the third one. Unfortunately, it has no video because this is the piece which I could not finish because of COVID and then because of the start of the war, which makes me running away from the country and slowly taking all the works somehow out. And it was the final piece of the trilogy, and it's dedicated to the Aral Sea. Maybe many of you heard about, which was not really a sea, it was just a huge salty lake in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, but because of the wrong usage of water, humans drained the whole sea in just 40 years for growing cotton in the desert where it should not be growing. So, and now ecologists, geologists, oceanographers, and everyone are studying for the first time they use this as a lab now. This desert which appeared in just 30 years, because they could see some geological or biological processes which usually takes like hundreds or thousands or even longer years to appear, and now they witness like a natural laboratory, what happens when the water disappears from the area of millions of square meters, or like many kilometers. And what this project is actually doing, it has something like, it has a petri dish with some samples of the soil of this area, and water drops in this petri dish, and a special mixer mix it into the mud. And this is what happens every spring, because rivers get full of the water from the Tian Shan mountains in China and Kazakhstan, and also just because of the snow and rain, and they refill the whole bottom of the sea again every May, but then it's never enough to sustain, and the sun is so strong in this area. It's extremely continental climate zone, so that all the water evaporates, and the sea dies every year actually. So it passes through this agony of disappearing every year, and the installation is actually repeating this process. So with the hot air that goes through the metal pipes, and with from the industrial heat guns, the water evaporates and creates the landscape, which is named in this Turk language is takir. So this is the type of this landscape with the salty mud that gets these craquelures that breaks into these patterns when the sun hits this in May and June. And then the installation used cameras. Unfortunately, I don't have still the video for the installation that turns these patterns into the endless soundscape. A pretty hardcore one, just to support the catastrophic and apocalyptic vibe of the whole installation. And then on the screen of the installation, there are some schematics and also all names of the cities or towns which were seaports, because it was a very important place for transport, for also harvesting fish. And there was a lot of industry around this, and all these towns which were big seaports previously, now they are become completely like continental. So it's pretty crazy. Maybe you can see it on, for example, on some of my documents. Unfortunately, no, I should add more photos. Maybe, but yeah, maybe here you can see that there are now ships standing just in the middle of the desert. So, and this looks pretty crazy, because some of these ships were quite big. When you come to the area and you see, like, in the middle of nowhere, there is no water for like 1,000 kilometers around. The closest water is in Caspian Sea. So, and then you see a ship standing there in the middle of the desert. That's quite strong, I would say. I will end here. Thanks.